Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of Lindsey Byrd in Writing is Hard. Today, we're talking about the art of a romance novel, how to write one, how to find those romantic beats, what is important for the structure, and also, towards the end, how to transition from self-pub success to trad pub debut. I hope you enjoy. Today's author interview is with Emma Lucy, a romance author based in London who loves writing books that will make you swoon, blush, and hopefully learn to believe in yourself a little more. When she's not writing, you can usually find her reading all the cowboy and small town romance books she can get her hands on, listening to whatever new country music artist she's obsessed with, and exploring bookstores in London. Live, Ranch, Love is Emma's debut novel and the first book in the Willow Ridge series. Its back of book blurb reads, when English wellness influencer Rory Jones inherits her great aunt's ranch in Colorado, her plan to fix up and sell up ASAP hits a snag. Grumpy head rancher Wyatt Hensley isn't willing to let a yoga-loving manifestation guru who doesn't even know how to ride a horse ruin his ranch. But when Rory faces up to the fact that she hasn't got anything to rush home for, they strike up a deal that just might save both their jobs. Can they keep things strictly business, or will their hearts take the reins instead? So, just to start us off, what inspired you to write this story?
Um, I always find this question a little bit hard because I don't think I have like one set thing that inspired me to write this story. It was basically like a passion project that I just started. I'm a huge fan of cowboy romances, obviously. And I'm very interested in anything kind of related and that area of life. And I love country music. It's something that I've always like enjoyed. And I think I just wanted to bring together my like love of that. I was very much in a phase of reading all this cowboy and small town romance like at the time. And I wanted to kind of meld it with a completely opposite passion of mine, which is like wellness and that kind of area. And just kind of see how these worlds would clash in the form of like romance. I think that a lot of the story is just about how the two characters are such opposites. And I just thought it would be actually a really fun idea to explore how these totally opposite people from, two areas of the world, two completely different lives, how they could actually find love together, like what would bring them together, what would be the points of contention, but also how would they complement each other as well. And I think that that was like an exciting thought I had, and I just kind of thought, oh, maybe I'll just like run with it. Just it was, I guess, two passions of mine, or three really, I guess, if you've got all the cowboy romances, wellness, and then just like romance and writing as general, just like bringing it all together.
So, London and cowboys are a little bit different. How did you get
Mhm.
involved in enjoying the cowboy milieu?
Um, I think like I really love country music, and I think that that's kind of a big aspect of it. A lot of the music that I listen to, I think that's kind of what sparked that passion for it. And I think a lot of the music and songs that I listen to are the things that inspire me to actually write, and they're the things that I get the ideas from. And I guess like just doing my research and like reading about it, and yeah, I don't know why, like it just kind of like fascinates me, I guess.
Are you the type of writer who has like a playlist for their books while they're writing?
Oh, 100%. I can't listen when I'm writing. I like if any music has lyrics in it, then I just can't do it. But all of my books have like 200, 300 song playlists just filled with it's all country music songs. And I find as soon as I listen to like a song, the first thing that my mind does is think like what what would be, say this was like in a movie, what would be the scene that this would go to? I don't know if that's like a writer thing because it's like an imagination thing. I don't know if you get that as well.
Um, I'm also one of those people who cannot listen to music with lyrics while I'm
Yeah.
writing. And
Mhm.
so I have taken advantage of some of like the automatic playlist type things where it's just like the dark whatever playlist. I'll put that on. But
Yeah.
there are definitely songs where like when I've been driving my car or I've been going for a walk somewhere, my music player will put on whatever song, and I'll stop and like I'll imagine the story that goes to that song, and then that's what happens from that point forward.
Yeah, I can imagine as well with like, because I like to listen to a lot of instrumental and like classical music when I write. Like that's the only thing I can really listen to. But I feel like that would actually be really helpful, like writing a fantasy, because again, like some of that music does kind of have that feel to it. Like I do actually have a playlist of acoustic like country songs, and that is quite helpful. But a lot of the time, I feel like actually this would be great if I was writing a fantasy.
No, it's very helpful. It helps that I've been raised in a very classical music household,
Yeah.
where I played cello for many
Oh,
years, and
amazing.
so I'm very familiar with many different types of classical music. Although the songs that I tend to like the most are not cello pieces; they're piano pieces. So like I've got like a
That's
Chopin
fun.
playlist where I'm just like, this is this, and then
Yeah.
Rachmaninoff. I'm like, all right, when I'm really wanting to get into something, the Rachmaninoff comes on. So like I'm familiar more with my classical stuff, which help. And also, I do love listening to Ghibli while I'm writing. Ghibli's a
Oh,
very
yeah.
decent,
Yeah.
like calming.
Yeah.
Although it depends what type of Ghibli and what type of scene.
Yeah, it depends on the scene, definitely. I do have like I have like a playlist on Spotify that is like dramatic classical songs for when I'm in like a scene that I'm like, right, this is where the drama is happening. This is where like they're having an argument, and then I put that on.
So you mentioned that you had songs that you would think of for specific scenes. For this book in particular, do you have songs that make you think of this is this particular character?
Yeah, I think so. I think certain songs are definitely more relatable to certain characters. I think a lot of I think it depends on the book. I feel like with Live Ranch Love, I think the characters actually kind of have the same like goals, and I do feel like a lot of what they're looking for is the same thing. But I think depending on obviously what the backstory is about the characters, I think that certain songs go with certain characters. And I think like in Live Ranch Love, Rory, the female main character, she's a lot more like upbeat, and she's very much the sunshine of the grumpy sunshine, whereas Wyatt is like a little bit more, I would say, like glass half empty kind of outlook. And so I think like there would definitely be different vibes to the kind of songs that I would choose for them to, based on just their own personalities as well.
Not to put you completely on the spot, but can you think of one song per character that you'd like to share here?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. I mean, I'm actually just literally on my Spotify right now trying to find my playlist, because I feel like whenever I think of, yeah, I think I could. So I would say the one that for Rory would be Kacey Musgraves' Butterflies, because again it's just a really beautiful song, and I think it kind of encapsulates like her kind of mindset, and also how she's found this person that actually like lifts her up when she kind of turns up at the ranch very like downtrodden. Things are not going well in her life. She's been cheated on by her partner, so she doesn't really feel like anyone's there championing her on. um but that's like kind of what Wyatt's role is in her life, and he really like brings her up again, and he doesn't like hold her back, and that's I think a lot of what that song is about. And I think probably for Wyatt, I I feel like I have a few, but I think there's a song called Forever After All by Luke Combs, and a big thing for like Wyatt is that he doesn't really believe in like good things lasting forever. Like nothing's really lasted for him. He will kind of like get something that goes well in his life, and then it just ends up going bad, or like he loses it. And I think that like again a big thing about his relationship with Rory is seeing that actually like he can believe in this lasting, and she kind of makes him see that and starts to like change his perspective on things. And ultimately his like the ending is all about him embracing the fact that he does want this to be forever, and he believes that it could be forever, and he's not going to let her run away because that's what he wants. And yeah, I think those would be the songs I would choose.
Excellent. I'll have to give them a listen to. I'm not familiar with them right now, but I will be after this interview.
Nice. Well, they're great songs.
When you are writing a romance, for you personally, do you like to switch back and forth from POVs? Do you keep it in one person's POV? How do you go about writing the romance?
Yeah, so all my books that I've written are dual POV. So I am a big fan of having both of the perspectives. I think sometimes it depends on the story and the book. I don't have a preference like to read, and I actually am working on a book that is single point of view, which has been really weird because I've written like four all in dual point of view. So it's a very like different way of doing it, but I think that the story lends itself to the single point of view better. Um, but I think one of the things I love about having the dual point of view is I think I just love being able to have like the male perspective and just like see how much he loves the woman. And I think that that's really nice. Because I think, I think one of the reasons like, or one of the reasons that people read, or I know that I like to write romance is to show people what they deserve in a relationship and that like these are the expectations. I think people say like, oh, romance books set like high expectations, but like ultimately I think that we should have those high expectations and that's what we deserve. And I think having that like the male point of view that you don't always get in a lot of like obviously in single point of view romances that are female centered is it you do get to see the man literally like being obsessed with a woman and it's really nice to see that and and also I think like depending on the story like with Wyatt and Rory's story it's very much a like they don't know what each other are thinking and I just love the whole like but we know what they're thinking why can't they see it and it's just that little bit of frustration like for the reader to be like no he does like you and I like kind of having that aspect of it as well and I think also like you create these characters and I feel very like close and connected to the characters and I kind of want to be in their point of view because I think certain characters can tell parts of the stories better than others as well.
You mentioned earlier that you were writing a story that the single point of view kind of lends itself more. Why would you make that particular? You don't have to give spoilers, but like, why would you write a story where you say that the story lends itself more to having one point of view before exploring all of the diversity you've just described with two points of view?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think for this one, I think the story that or like the plot is much more centered around the main female character's life. And I think in order to give for me to give I think enough just time to that plot and time to her development because I think also her development is really like in a really like integral part of the plot. I think it just felt right. Um and I wasn't sure whether I could like convey as much detail. I felt like maybe this had more detail. I don't know. It's a really weird thing to describe, but I just and also I feel like I'm really, really connected to this character that I've been trying to write about. And I think I would like to, explore how deep I can go into like her development as a character, which I do think that you can miss when you're doing dual point of view. Um, because yeah, you only technically, I suppose, have like half a book to give to the each character's development. So I think I just kind of want to see what it's like to try and actually make it more about just this one individual person. Um, yeah, it's a good question, but I don't know. I don't know. Do you have a preference? Do you have a preference in point of view?
I think when I'm writing, I it depends on the story.
Yeah.
But the first book that I published was an indie published book called On the Subject of Griffons, and
Mhm.
it was one point of view from start to finish.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really liked about writing that particular book was I could only get that character's personal insight on the page.
Yes.
I I couldn't get into the other characters' heads. I was only in
Mhm.
her head. And so whatever
Mm,
the other person was feeling, as the author, I knew what they were feeling,
yeah,
but the character wasn't sure. And so she was
yes,
making
yeah,
assumptions, she was making judgments, she was deciding for herself what the other characters were thinking or feeling or doing. And that
yeah,
may or may not have been correct. But because we were only in her head, all we saw was her processing of the story and the events that were taking place. And so that was for that book because it was so much about her overcoming her own grief and her
yeah,
like coming to a point where she was like, you know what? My husband is dead and I have a family and I'm moving on. And
yeah,
I'm ready to move on and I
mm,
deserve to be happy. I deserve to, get to that point. So for that
yeah,
book, having it in one point of view because it was really her story and her dealing
yeah,
with everything made a lot of sense.
mhm,
Um, for the book that I'm publishing right now, The Sun Blessed Prince, I have three point of
yeah,
views.
yeah. I know, 'cause it's very different.
Yeah,
That's
it's
understandable,
very
yeah.
different. And then even the book that I'm currently writing,
Mhm.
again, it's multiple point of views. And so I feel like I enjoy having one point of view when it's like really the story is really hyper focused on that one character's journey.
Yeah,
When I'm writing a story that is more sprawling or epic, or it's not so much about getting one character from point A to point B, it's about
yeah,
all of the different interactions.
yeah.
Now I really like playing with the multiple points of view, and I
Mm,
think I tend to write more multiple point of views because I like having the different perspectives. One thing I think I have a tendency to do is if I have a scene or a moment happening,
mm,
if there is a character who is experiencing the most important thing happening in that scene,
yeah,
I don't always give them the point of view. Instead, I give it to someone else who's observing them going through this big thing. So you don't, so you have to see what this thing is happening from an audience perspective the whole time.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that's not always the case. There are definitely scenes where like the main character is doing the thing.
yeah,
But I think it's fun playing with that distance of are you really close? Are you really far apart? What are you getting out of it? And how are you interacting with that scene? And so I like playing with the dynamics you can do with multiple point of view.
yeah. I think it like, yeah, and I think sometimes, because sometimes I find, especially writing dual point of view, which I don't know if I'm gonna come across this obstacle while I'm writing like single point of view, but sometimes like I'll be a bit stumped on a scene and then I'm like, maybe I just need to write this in a different point of view. And then when you do, you're like, this works so much better. But yeah, I guess when you have like, yeah, but if you're doing single point of view, you don't really have that to fall back on in the way. But yeah, I think you're completely right. And I think it completely depends on the story and like you said, kind of what is most important to the story. And like you said, with the first book, it's like they were so like integral to the plot and their development. I think that it almost needed to be in their point of view.
Yeah, because I think it really depends what the story you're trying to tell. If the story is really character focused, where you're looking at this character's journey, I think having it maybe even in first person, but having it in one voice, start to
Mm,
finish, where you're following one head the whole way through. Um, I personally don't tend to write in first person. I like the flexibility of writing in like either a very close third or somewhat omniscient, but I tend not to like, I don't like head jumping. So I like to stay with one
yeah,
person. Um,
yeah, yeah,
but it's just, I think if you're really doing a character focused story, one point of view makes perfect sense. But the moment you start getting a lot of different things happening, especially with a lot of different locations, it's a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
easier if you're following multiple people.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So with your particular story, you have your male voice and your female voice. Did you struggle with going back and forth between creating that difference between the two voices, or how did you differentiate them while you were creating the different points of view?
Um, no, I don't think I really did. I feel like I get to know my characters so well that as if they're like real people, which I think like all authors do. It's like, yeah, these are basically my friends. um, but yeah, I think again, because a lot of the yeah, I would say with like every book I've written, maybe with my second book, the characters are a little bit more similar in their personality, but especially with like Live Ranch Love, the characters are so opposite that I think that was actually quite that didn't present a problem for me because I think it was basically like, right, well, this reaction of this person is going to be completely opposite to what the other person is like thinking or how they're going to react because they are two opposites. Um, yeah, I think like and yeah, I just try and get to know my characters like as best as I can and try and work out. I read something once I try and do more and more like each time I write a book is actually like planning out your characters like reactions to certain situations because I think it's quite easy to fall into a trap of like everybody reacts in the same way and everybody like even just like physical reactions, even if they're subtle, we think like everyone would do the same thing, but everyone's had different backgrounds, so they're gonna react in a very different way. So I try and like learn that before I jump into actually like writing. And I think that helps when you're like going between like two different point of views or like three in your case.
No, I definitely think it does help because even just a physical tick, for instance, like if someone gets angry, they clench their fists or they clench their teeth or their jaw
Mm.
twitches or something. So you're not like making everybody have the exact same tick
Yeah.
every time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that that just like shows their personality as well. And it's just like I don't know if like readers notice it in the same way, but I try my best to keep them different and understand like actually how their emotional reactions would be different because everyone learns to deal with emotions in a very different way. And so it would be like very impressive if like two people came together and they dealt with things exactly the same way.
A little narcissistic when they fall in love with each other, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, this is my carbon copy. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, but I swear they say that like no one would actually want to fall in love with themselves. I feel like I wouldn't get along with myself.
I would irritate myself.
Yeah, same.
I know everything I do that's irritating, and I know I would irritate myself.
Yeah.
It's different when I do it to myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, with romance stories, though, the love interest and even the main character, their dynamic and their interactions with each other is so important. When you're writing Wyatt, for instance,
Mm.
how do you go about making him a character that readers go, "Oh yes, this is the man"?
Um, I think I think it's kind of what I mentioned earlier about I think for me, and I think a lot of other like romance writers would maybe agree in that a huge point of like writing the love interest is again showing readers like how they deserve to be treated. Like, yes, the characters will have flaws and there will be things about them that people might not like or it might not gel with, but like ultimately everybody has flaws, and that's like a big point of romance is that you have these flawed people coming together. But I think these like you have a love interest that maybe has some flaws, but that doesn't stop them from treating their like their love interest or your main character with respect and devotion. I think a lot of women, and I know I used to be like this myself, don't realize how much they deserve from a partner. And I don't think that we always like hold high enough expectations for actually the love that we deserve. So I think a lot of Wyatt's character and any of the other male love interests that I've created was kind of based on this. So in Live Ranch Love, the two characters, Wyatt and Rory, do actually start off on a very bad footing. They don't get along with each other. They're so opposite, and it's really clear from the start that these two could easily hate each other. But Wyatt is actually a very understanding man, and he listens to Rory's worries and he reassures her. He takes interest in the things that she loves, even though he has no idea what they are. I mean, she's a wellness influencer, and the amount of times he's like, I still don't understand what actually she does for a living. But he takes the time to learn the things that she likes and he prioritizes things like her pleasure as well. And he also holds her accountable. And I think that that's important, is someone who builds you up, but also recognizes that, like, come on, you've got to do this. Like, she's not in a great place, but she needs to like work on it herself as well. And I think ultimately, like, he chases after her when he thinks she's leaving, and he shouts through the airport for her. And I think, like, he isn't willing to give up on her. And I think that's super important. Um, and I think like romance is kind of like an escape for a lot of people. It's sometimes like a very different reality to the relationships that a lot of people experience, and it offers an example of, yeah, I think what we deserve in our relationships. So I think beyond just like Wyatt's general personality, I think like a lot of creating him is thinking about actually what do people deserve? Like, what do we deserve in a love interest?
When you're focusing on what your readers deserve in their relationships,
Mm.
how do you go about doing it so that either A, it doesn't sound preaching, like this is
Mhm.
what you deserve, go out and do it in this order, but
Yeah.
also it allows for a little bit of like growing pains where somebody's like, well, do I really deserve that? I mean, like, I haven't done X, Y, and Z, and so maybe I really don't. Like, how do you help bring that to somebody to really believe that no, you do deserve respect in this and that?
I think like I don't think it would be preachy in terms of, I think like ultimately it's just an example of how like one person could act. I mean, you think like you read well, I read hundreds of romance books, and like all the love interests are different, but ultimately it like boils down to they're all respectful and devoted to the person that they're with. um but I think a massive part of romance is that you start with these two flawed characters and people who have had trouble in the past. There are things that are stopping them from wanting to fall in love, or stopping them from asking for what they really want in a relationship or want from love. And through the book, you're showing that despite those flaws or the things that they think is holding them back from love, ultimately you are giving them a happy ending, and you're showing how they grow as people, and often it's growing together. And I think that if you have these flawed characters, I think sometimes like as an author, there's a I don't think I'm trying to think of the word, but you almost want to like have these perfect characters because you want people to like them. But ultimately, like, nobody's perfect. And if you read a book about a perfect person, you're going to be like, well, I cannot relate to this at all. Or maybe some people can, and I would love to be that person. But we all have our flaws, and we all have the things. And when I say flaw, I don't mean like things that are bad about us, but I mean like things that hold us back, whether that is, yeah, past experiences or just like beliefs about ourselves. um I think, yeah, showing that your characters also have these flaws and have these differences or obstacles in their life, I think can make them more relatable, and hopefully then like show people that, yeah, okay, we've all got things that we're working on, and we've all got things that we find difficult, but look, here are two people that also have this, and they still found a really lovely, healthy relationship.
When you are writing them slowly getting closer and closer and closer, for you as a writer, when do you decide this is the moment when they've fallen in love? And is that the same moment that they admit it?
No, I think my characters never admit it at the point that they fall in love. I think like from a very I don't know if like organized or like logical point of view, I think like as a writer, I follow like a set structure, and I think there is a point probably in a story when your character should be kind of falling in love, or whether it might be that you don't touch on love, but should be recognizing their feelings and should be at that point, that kind of like high point of the relationship, before obviously you then put them through hell and break everything up and ruin it before the happy ending. But so I would try and make sure that they're getting to that point roughly at the point in the story that I would want them to. um but I think there's always like there's always a series of scenes of events that are going to happen that I think this is normally happening at a time where, something has already happened between the characters, and the characters have shown up enough for the other one. And I think that's a massive thing, because I think a lot of like a relationship or in the romance is often like showing up for the other person. But yeah, I normally have my characters, taking a few chapters being like, yeah, I'm definitely in love with them, but I can't say it yet. Because I think it is like it's a scary thing. And again, that's showing that, these characters have started the book being afraid of love, or closed off to it. And now they're like, oh my God, I'm literally so deep in love with this person. What am I supposed to do? So I think like I don't think I could ever like have my characters just being like straight away, yes, I'm in love with you. Because I think that's really hard as like a person to do. That's quite a big thing to admit. Um, so yeah, but I would normally have like a point roughly when I think I would have them saying it.
Something I'm curious about is, and I will confess, I do not read a lot of romance books.
Mhm.
So please feel free to correct me.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
My understanding is that many romance books follow the story of two people who meet and then fall in love, and then it kind of ends after the relationship, starts. What
Yeah.
happens afterwards? Is there room in the genre, or is it just a completely different genre where you follow the continuation of that romance, where you see the post "I love you" moments?
I think it depends. I think a lot of my own books, I do tend to end it on when the relationship is still quite new. I think it depends what the story of the book is, because sometimes you do have it where they actually have been together for a while. But I think like part of romance is offering that happily ever after and showing that these people are, they have found their person, and it's kind of like a promise that they are going to stay together. I mean, a lot of authors have things like epilogues which show like a little bit in the future. I always love to like shove something in that's like a year or two in the future. um I think there's like possibilities. I don't think I've read any romance books that have carried on a relationship unless it was perhaps in a different setting. I do know of some where the first book doesn't actually necessarily end on the happily ever after, so then the second book then continues the romance. I think typically when people think of romance, you are expecting a happily ever after. Um, but also, like, one of the things with my books is that they are part of a series, or a series of interconnected standalones. So Wyatt and Rory's story does not finish in Live Ranch Love. They are in the second and the third book. And I just think that's really nice because, and I know a lot of like romance series do this, because then you still get to see those characters and like how they're doing. Um, and still see them hitting like milestones in their relationship, but they're just a secondary character now. So I think that's one way to kind of like carry it on, and then it just emphasizes that happily ever after as well.
So it's like when you're writing a romance, is the purpose for the book to get to the point where the relationship has started and now you know everything beautiful is going to happen, continue. You don't need to show that because the difficult part was getting to that moment.
Yeah, I think like the point, or for me at least, is like the point of romance is having these people. You're starting off with two people who are closed off to love. They've closed off their hearts. They've got some sort of wound from the past that is stopping them from falling in love, and whether it's falling in love completely or falling in love with like that particular person. um and ultimately it's getting them from being closed off to love to being completely open to it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they are, again, like perfect by the end of it, but it's just they have healed that part of them, or they have started to heal that part of them. And it is kind of like, yeah, it's kind of saying like they've done the necessary development that they need to do as like a character, as a person. And yeah, they're going to continue and work on this together. And yeah, it's a promise that what they've done over like time of this story has set them up for this beautiful relationship.
What would you say a good, or maybe I shouldn't say a good, but what would you say an average span of time is within a romance book. For instance, like if
Oh,
they meet on January 1st, are
yeah.
they together by the end of the year? Does it take 4 years? What is the span of time in most romance books?
I don't think there's necessarily like a set time. I think it's quite common for it to be over like a span of a few months. But I've read ones that are like a year. Um, I think again it depends on what is happening in the plot of the story. Mine tend to be over a few months. Like Live Ranch Love is set over a couple of months, because she's only supposed to be there for a couple of months, and my second book is set over the summer because it's somebody's summer break from college. My third book is a little bit, I'd say a little bit longer, but again, I think it's a few months because I feel like for me, I feel like that fits with like what's happening in the story. But I think it depends as well on like what would be the external plot. So like beyond the romance, if you have something else that's going on, how would that affect things as well? So yeah, I think it kind of depends. And again, it might depend on like the characters and how long they might need to be open to love as well. But I don't know if there is like a particular set amount of time that like there's never a thing where it's like, oh, your romance book has to be over this many months or anything.
If you're not in love and in bed within the first week, you're out of here.
Yeah. But that's the thing, like there are romances where it could be like a week and that's fine. I think it's like different people are gonna again, I think it kind of comes back to what we were saying earlier in that like it completely depends on the characters, I think. Like some people will react differently and will be more open to love like quicker. It might be that, especially if you've got like a single point of view, it might be that actually the love interest is way more open to it. And so things happen faster as well. But again, I think it's very like character driven on what fits right with the story that your characters are in.
With the romance novel, as you mentioned already, there's the plot, which is, the romance, but there's also the secondary plot of what's happening while these characters are falling in love.
Mm.
And in this case, they're dealing with the ranch situation.
Hmm.
In general, when you're writing that secondary story, what's the balance between, all right, we need to focus this amount on the relationship, but we also need to move the storyline of like where they're physically moving forward over here? Like, how do you juggle the two different plots at the same time?
I think that like I find that quite like a hard thing to do. I feel like that's something that I think each time I've like written a book, I absolutely like love learning. So every time I write a book or like finish a book, I then do like a bunch of learning to just like try and do better like next time as well. Um, but I think you need uh, I am very, I think, character driven in my romances. I like to be in the head of my characters a lot. Um, and whereas I think like not all romances are necessarily like that. And I don't think I have a preference of for like reading. I think again it owes to the story. I mean, my stories are very much, they're low stakes. So the external plot is not going to be super, super dramatic. I think the external plot is important for keeping the pacing going and for creating opportunities for points of like contention and an obstacle for the characters because ultimately if it is just about like the two of them just thinking about each other all the time, I think they could fall in love quite easily that way, but you want to test your characters. And I think that's when you would want to bring it in. I think you can do like either way of whether you have it quite heavy on the external plot, but I think that's when I try and bring it in the most is when it's like actually this is a point where we need to test this relationship, not necessarily in like a bad way, but it might actually be like an opportunity to show how well they work together. um but yeah, that's when I think like I try and bring it in.
How long did it take you to write the first book?
I wrote it in just under 3 months.
Oh, it's like you just like went down and started typing, didn't you?
Yeah, I literally like yeah, I think because I had zero expectations for what was going to happen with the book, it was just like, I'll try writing this, I'll see what happens. it was very much just like, yeah, just write everything that I can think of. And obviously, like, I mean, I write it in just under 3 months, but then it took like months of editing as well. So ultimately, it probably was like 6 months or so that I worked on it in total. But I do find that if I'm like really excited for a book, I can get it written like quite quickly. I mean, that feels quick to me. I know people who can write books in like weeks, which I can't even fathom. Um, but but again, I do think it probably depends on the book again, because like the single point of view one that I'm trying to write at the moment, I think is has a lot more to the plot that I need to work out. And I think this one will take me a lot. I think it will take me longer than 3 months. Um, but yeah, I did write it quite quick.
Was this the first book you ever decided you were going to write, or had you been writing prior?
So I wrote one other book before this that will never see the light of day, because it was just like I worked on a book for like 2 years, but it was just here and now. I would like add a little bit to it as like, yeah, as like a kind of like a hobby, but it, it's not something that I think I wanted to like do anything with. It was more just like a story I wanted to have fun with. But I think like, yeah, now the things that I'm writing, I'm like, yeah, I want to do something with these, and I do tend to be able to write them faster then.
When you finally decided that you wanted to, you finished the book, what made
Mhm.
you decide, you know what, I'm going to publish this book? And what did that publication journey look like?
Um, I think like, yeah, I mean when I started writing it, I didn't really know like what was going to happen. And I think when I then finished it, I was like, "Oh, wow, okay, I have actually finished this." And I think so obviously I self-published it originally before it's being republished this month with HarperCollins. But I think for me, I just loved my story so much, and I just enjoyed writing it, and I had so much fun with it that I just kind of thought I would really love to be able to share this with like other people. And I was very lucky to have people around me who I had seen self-publish. So I think that was always going to be my way of doing things. I think self-publishing is a lot quicker. So I think for me it was like, if I want to get this out there now, like that's how I'm going to do that. So yeah, I'm very grateful for the authors that helped me and gave me their advice on what they did for self-publishing. But it's it's been like a very strange journey. I mean, it's been a roller coaster going from having to learn everything to self-publish, and then getting obviously my book deal, and kind of relearning everything again, because it's a very different world. It's so
It is
strange.
very
Did you find,
different.
I was gonna say, did you find like it's been a very different experience from your first and second book?
Um, yes. I feel like with on the subject of Griffons, it was an indie pub, and
Mhm.
I one of the biggest things that I felt with that was that there wasn't a lot of marketing.
Yeah,
And when it came out, it was not the best book in the world. It just wasn't. But even if it had been, nobody would
yeah,
have known about it because there was
yeah,
just no marketing.
yeah,
Like it could have been, we'll never know. It could
yeah,
have been, a multi-award winning book, but if nobody knows it exists, no one's going to find it.
yeah,
And for me, at that moment in my life, I was just about to start my master's degree, and I was like, I have no money, I have no time, I'm not going to be able to market this book. Goodbye.
yeah, yeah. No, that's fair enough. Yeah, because I think that has been one of the really interesting things, is like, especially self-publishing, is you do have to put on like so many different hats. And like you think you've written a book and you think that's all you got to do, and then you're like, oh no, I've got to market this as well. And I do kind of love it, because I feel like I get to connect with so many readers through marketing, and like I like my social media, but it is like a lot to have to learn. And I think it's an ever-changing landscape as well, of like what's working, what isn't working. And you don't, and you see, I think, like firsthand actually the impact that the marketing can have on things like sales.
Yeah, and I'm terrible at it. I'm just absolutely terrible at it. I get so nervous talking to people. I mean, I'm just like, I don't know. Is this graphic good? Is it not good? I have no idea. I'm not artistically inclined in that particular way. People ask me like,
Honestly.
what do you think of this color? And it's like, blue's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing. And so I'm absolutely terrible at the marketing side, and the money that you need to put into it and stuff like that. That's very difficult for me personally. And so for me, Switching to trad pub, I like that I can just depend on other people to they're gonna contact the influencers, they're gonna contact this. I'm very happy to say, "Thank you so much, I really appreciate it. You're so kind to
Yeah.
say" like, I love doing that. I like being grateful. But
Yeah,
it's very
yeah.
hard for me to, like, go out and market something.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair, and I think, like, one of the things that I've enjoyed about moving from indie to trad is, like, not having to have that responsibility and, like, or for the US, like, we've changed the cover that I originally used, and we've got a brand new cover, and, like, they obviously, like, asked my opinions on it. I'm like, I mean, they all look great because it looks great. I'm not a designer, so I don't know what's, like, best, and it's quite nice to, like, be able to hand that responsibility over because it's like ultimately I'm not, you know, I want to focus on the writing, or like my time is focusing on how I can get better at writing, like having to learn all of the marketing aspects. I mean, I do still do a lot of social media, and I think I'm still in the mindset of doing that because I have been doing that for the last almost year, well, over a year now. Um, so I think I'll probably like still kind of keep that up, but it is quite nice to be able to be like, you know what, I'm gonna let the experts do it.
Um, I think for a lot of people who self-pub, there's a hidden desire that their book is going to be really popular and that some agent or editor is going to find them and they're going to, bring them into the trad pub world. How did that work for you? And what was the actual process of transitioning from self-pub to trad pub with this book?
Yeah, so I actually obviously we have the same agent. So I was actually in contact with Maddie before I self-published. She'd come across like my social media and wanted to read my book, but this was like I think a few weeks out of me releasing it. So we basically made the decision of like let's just release it because I think we didn't really want to be like let's take it out, get rid of all the like the pre-orders and all the stuff that people have been saying and suddenly be like, "Oh, it's not coming out now." Um, and just kind of like see how it goes. And I mean, it did, well enough. And then like, yeah, me and Maddie, like I signed with Maddie, and I mean, it was so quick. It was basically like we kind of looked at how it did, and it was just like, right, we just have to go on like submission now. I think it was either going to be like submission now. This was last summer, or wait like till the next year. And I think what we did was like the best decision. And it was really quick. I think it was on submission for probably like a month or two. I think we got like the deal properly all like agreed in September time. So I think it was under 2 months, or like just over 2 months of like actually releasing. Um, but yeah, it's been like a very interesting process. I think because the book coming out, because Live Ranch Love is being republished, I think it's still not um I don't think like I've experienced like the full process yet because ultimately like a lot of stuff was already done. And like it hasn't gone through like I did all like I did the, went through the edits and everything when I was self-publishing. I've already gone through all that. So it's not quite the same. Whereas it's been quite interesting now going through all of that with my second book, and seeing the difference there. But yeah, I mean, it's been like I think one of the things that I found really hard was having to like keep secrets. I feel like when you're self-publishing, you can just say whatever you want because it's you. But like this has been really hard to be like, I mean, I knew since September and we announced in February that, or like end of February, that the book like had been picked up. So that was like very hard, and also not being able to, I think if I was self-publishing my second book, I would have told people like so much about it, which I probably shouldn't have. So like it's probably been good for me to actually keep some secrets.
One of the
But yeah,
things
it's
that
been a weird process, but really good.
One of the things that I've seen, and have been told before is that if you publish something online, then you'll never be able to get it published anywhere else because there's just going to be an embargo. Obviously, that was not the case. Did HarperCollins say anything? Did you have to pull down the self-published copy? What was the actual like physical process of transitioning from the self-published copy to the re-release?
Yeah, I mean, it was really easy to be honest. I mean, I had my manuscript, so they then gave them the manuscript, and ultimately it was just a case of switching it over on Amazon. It was just a case of when they told me to, I took it off because I did it through Kindle Direct Publishing of just taking it off the territories that they have the rights to. So it's not I think there is a perhaps older view that still is around that if you self-publish, you can't be traditionally published. And I think that that probably comes from both just like the trend in the past that maybe that didn't happen, and also some I think people still look badly on self-publishing in some areas, but I think the last however many years has seen like such a rise in it. And I think in particular genres, I don't think it's necessarily in like in all genres, but I mean, I have my bookshelf like in behind my laptop here, and I'm just looking at so many of the books. And I'm like, they used to be self-published, they used to be self-published, they used to be self-published. Like it's a thing now because ultimately I think if the book is good and it's selling well, like why wouldn't a publisher want it? Um and yeah, so I think that not I think just because you've already self-published or you've already put your stuff online, I mean, there's fan fiction that is now being published as a book. Like it's being redone and published as an actual book. Like, and I'm pretty sure some of that fan fiction is still online. Like, so
One
I
of
think that
my
view,
fan
yeah,
fiction authors that she wrote James Bond fan fiction, and I distinctly and like Sherlock fan fiction, and I distinctly remember when she got her book deal, it was based off of one of her James Bond fan fictions.
yeah,
And or maybe it was a Sherlock one. It was one of the two.
yeah, yeah,
They crossed over.
exactly.
But like when she did it, I bought her book, and then I was surprised because she kept the fan fiction version on AO3.
Mhm.
And when asked about it, she's like, I had a discussion with the publisher and they didn't care. So the fan fiction version's still there. And so it really
Yeah,
depends on the publisher.
I think that's it. I think it depends on the publisher, and I think that the idea that you can't get published if you've like already put stuff online or you've already self-published something is a very old view that I think people need to leave behind, really.
Before I let you go today, I did want to ask, is there anything we haven't had a chance to talk about that you would like to talk about?
Um, I mean, I would love I realize that your book is like imminently out. Like I would love to know like a little bit more about it and like what inspired you as well to write it.
It was fan fiction.
Fair. I mean, fan fiction is great.
No, so the Sunblessed Prince, when I first got the idea to write the book, it came out of the Old Guard movie on Netflix.
Okay.
And the story of that movie was essentially there's a group of immortal warriors who they have no idea why they're immortal, but they are, and they're basically mercenaries who try to make the world a better place.
Mhm.
Whether or not they're successful as that is up for debate. um, they can't die, so they just kind of like do the best they can. Um, I really liked the dynamic between the characters, and when I was looking at the story, something I was thinking about is like, all right, well, if you can't die, what's your actual relationship to death?
Mm,
And how do you actually like think about that? And at the same time that the movie came out, COVID was happening.
yeah.
And so not to be very morbid, but I was really thinking about death a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough.
And so I was trying to think of like, all right, well, if you're an immortal person, who's controlling that? And so that came into, all right, they're gods, there's life and death. And then
Mhm,
it started going into, all right, well, if you have these gods, then what if you can portray those powers? And so I ended up splitting the immortality, and I was like, all right, this person's immortal because they've been chosen by the god of life. This person's immortal because they've been chosen by the god of death,
mhm,
goddess of death. What does that actually mean? How does that play out? And then that evolved into the power system of
mhm.
reapers kill anything they touch.
Right.
Givers can resurrect the dead.
Mhm,
What does that mean in practicality? And then I just went into this whole tailspin of the culture of if you kill anything you touch, people aren't going to like you very much.
No.
But at the other side, if you can heal any wound and you can resurrect the dead, people are going to take advantage of you a lot.
Yeah.
And so you have a culture where one group of people are like, all right, you're going to be here and you are our slave doctors, was the best
Yeah.
way of putting it. Like, all you do is heal us because we need
Yeah.
you to be our doctors.
Yeah.
And with COVID, where I was just seeing the healthcare workers just working nonstop day after day after day,
Yeah.
what that life as of an essential worker was, how they were like dealing with it. And so, yes, it started from the old guard movie, but it became this entire like world that was very different, as I really just started playing with the ideas of everything.
Yeah.
And then when it came to like the actual relationship, at that point it was like the duality of
Yeah.
somebody who
Yeah.
is a reaper, somebody's a giver. What does that mean when they come together? What does that
Mhm.
mean for a world that's been around this? And it just kind of flourished from there.
Yeah, that is amazing. I'm so excited to read.
I love it. By the time this comes out, which will be well after my launch date is technically tomorrow, June 5th.
Yeah.
June 5th. That's the
Amazing.
date of my PhD defense. The launch date of my book is May 1st.
Yeah. Mhm.
I'm sorry, my brain is like, I have two important dates in my head, and those are the only
I was gonna
dates.
say, to be fair, your release date is like tomorrow. So
Yes, my release date's tomorrow while we're filming this. This will be on after
yeah.
that, but
Mhm.
yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah. Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah, so thank you for allowing me to have a plug.
That's all right. No, I just wanted to learn more as well.
Honestly, I love the book a lot. It people have marketed as a romantasy. That is one thing that I haven't been crazy about with the marketing, because it has been marketed as a romantasy, and I think some people, especially after our conversation
Mhm.
today about romances, they might not be so happy with it if they
Yeah.
go in expecting a romance.
Mhm.
There is a romantic subplot. It
Yes.
is a very big B plot to everything
Yeah.
else.
Mhm.
And yes, it's also a duology, and so the romance carries into the second book where it actually like exists.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as far as like romance is concerned, there's a very good start to a slow burn in
Yeah.
the first
I do
book.
think I was gonna say, I think the one thing with like romance, I read a lot of romance and fantasy as well, is I do think that I don't know if the whole happily ever after and some of the conventions quite apply in the same way, because I think often with fantasies and romances it's over more than one book. So I don't think like people always expect it to be like nicely tied up at the end of book one. If they know it's going to be a duology, then I think
Oh,
that
I think some people are like, if you're told it's a romantasy, they want to see it on page right now.
yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and I completely respect that. Like, it's something that I'm fully aware of. There's definitely tension. I think it's closer as a political fantasy with a strong romantic subplot in book one.
Yeah.
In book two, you will see more of the romantic elements.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
actually see the characters together. But I think for me, it's enemies to lovers in the sense that these are
Yes.
two people on opposite ends of the world. It takes a
Yeah.
book for them to
Yeah.
get to like that
Oh, for
moment where they're
sure.
like, all right, let's figure something out. But it takes
Yeah.
a book of events before they're like, all right, we are now at a moment where we can
Yeah.
have a conversation. Um, but I'm a very slow burn person. I need someone to
Mm.
take their time to figure it out. They need to be on
Mhm.
the same page for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love a slow burn. Yeah.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. It was lovely to have you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely to chat.
That's it for today's episode of Lindsey Byrd in Writing is Hard. You can find out more about Emma Lucy and her upcoming book, Live Ranch Love, in the description. If you enjoyed this content, please do like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to make you more. Bye for now.